Supervisor recess meeting, June 30th, 2022, meeting called to order. First on the agenda is the adoption of tax levies.
Mr. Chairman, I'll mention, we only do these meetings once a year. Typically, we would have, approval of end of the year bills. But I realized a couple of days ago that we were meeting on the evening of the 30th. And typically, we wait for approval of the bills before they'll cut the checks early, but we don't run them through the treasurer's office until the day after the meeting. So had we done that, those checks would have all been dated July 1 and would have gone on next year's budget and not this year's budget. So I did hand out a copy of the bills that we have paid here right at the end of the year, $139, almost $140,000 that normally would have come to you all, but I knew there wasn't a way to do it and get it in this year's bills. So those have been handled. But the first item is you have a memo there for adoption of the tax levies. We did not hold any public hearings or anything to consider changing the rates, so they would be the same as they were last year at real property at 0.6187 cents per $100 of assessed value, personal property at $2 per $100 of assessed value, machinery and tools at $2 per 100 of assessed value, and merchant's capital at $1.41 per 100 of assessed value.
What's the rule on timing as far as when you can raise real property taxes, the rate?
Well, our budget is built on this. Of course, the tax bills won't go out until later in the year, whether or not. I'd have to look deeper into the code. Typically, we deal with it prior to June 30th. I've never, in 26 years, we've never made an adjustment after budget adoption going into that year.
So you're not aware of anything that says we can't do it later?
I don't recall having read anything, but it would have to be done fairly soon because tax bills are due October 1st now, and those will be generated pretty soon.
What's required, a 7-day notice for public hearing or 10? If you don't know off the top of your head, it's all right.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's 7 days, but I'm not certain.
Less than 15?
I think so, yeah. I don't think it's a 2-week for that. I think it's just 7 days.
Any more discussion before we, take a vote?
Would you all consider a modest increase on real property taxes?
No.
Okay. Then I've got a motion on merchant's capital, the chair will entertain.
Go ahead, what's your motion?
I make a motion that we set the rate for merchant's capital tax at $1.41 per $100 of assessed value.
That's what it already is.
Right.
So you wanna go through them separately?
I'm not gonna make a motion to keep real property at 6187. And I assume that you all may not agree to personal property at $2. Cause that includes the vehicle taxes.
Well, everything's the same as it was last year.
Right. But I gathered there was some support for the idea of lowering the rate on personal property. I would vote to leave it at 2, but
I think during the discussion, everybody had agreed on leaving it the same as it was, and with the deficit we have.
I said early on, I would never vote for a deficit budget.
You can't balance it that way. You can't balance it. So, no, you can't. If you go up once, you still can't balance it. If you go up once you probably want to go to, you still won't balance it.
You couldn't without cutting something.
We ain't gonna cut.
You go through.
We've gone through this budget, we've looked at it.
We haven't gone through near as much as we normally do.
Dan, what would it take at our shortfall that we got to balance the budget?
1.735 million and $50.
Then how much would you raise real property to balance the budget?
Probably 70 cents. But that would not balance it alone. You'd have to.
That's what I'm saying, you talking about you want to balance the budget, how are you gonna balance it? They ain't even going up to that.
Raise the real property taxes and then start cutting from expenditures.
I don't know how you cut it.
The problem is, the taxes have not been raised in 15 years. And when you don't raise it a couple of pennies here and there, you get caught with what we're facing right now.
What was it last year, Dan? The deficit?
I think it was about 1.3 million was what was adopted.
Well, you didn't get a second on that, so I guess the motion dies. On what?
I made a motion on merchants capital for $1.41.
And I second that.
What's what it was last year?
I mean, it's the same thing.
Right.
Okay, got a motion and a second, all those in favor?
I make a motion to adopt $2 per $100 of assessed value on machinery and tools.
Second. Motion and a second, all those in favor? Any opposed?
I make a motion to adopt $2 per 100 of assessed value for personal property.
Second. Got a motion and a second, all those in favor? Any opposed? I'll make a motion to, keep the real property at .6187 per 100.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second, all those in favor? Any opposed? Well, I don't know where we go from here, we've never experienced it,
I think compromise is the only way you can go.
Well, I don't know that there is a compromise because, we've went past our limit. It has to be finalized today.
I would vote for a budget deficit if we could have an increase in real property taxes.
Guess we'll move on to item B. Fiscal year 2022-2023
Well, the first one is budget adoption. Last few years, I've done this in steps rather than adopting and doing the appropriation at the same time. As it's currently drafted, the FY 2022-23 proposed budget anticipates revenues of $81,913,151 and budget expenditures of $83,648,201, which would require a transfer of $1,735,050 from the general fund reserves to balance with the projected revenues. And any further changes to the budget should be in the form of a motion at this point and addressed prior to adoption.
I make a motion that we accept the budget appropriation resolution.
Well, I'm asking for a motion on adoption of the budget first and then appropriate the funds. Adoption just means you're adopting it as it's drafted now. And then the appropriations resolution actually appropriates funds and makes them available for expenditure. Or you wanna make a motion on both at the same time, that's fine, I don't.
It's as broad as it is long, I would think. So,
It is.
Yeah, I'd make a motion on both.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, all those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye. Which two were you voting on, D? A and B?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, both those motions fail, so there's not a need to vote on, supplemental appropriation budget transfers, I would think.
Well, those are for the current year,
Okay.
and there will.
Oh, that's the ones that you just, that we talked about.
Well, no, that was bills that we paid. This is clearing up, or doing supplemental appropriations to cover overages in some areas. The first one is in the Board of Supervisors under miscellaneous, is where most of this came from. That included the clearing at the airport, it included, the new sound system, it included, trying to think, there was 3 or 4 items that really pushed that up, and that also includes, donations that you all make to, the civic groups or the community centers, things of that nature. The second one is funding, revenue that's been received for the sheriff's office, and pays for the required classes for gun permits. The third one is donations to the sheriff's office for the purchase of a K-9. And the other one is for, budget supplements for the pool, where we haven't operated in the last couple of years, and minimum wage has increased twice since that time. And the cost of getting it up and running was a little bit more than anticipated. On the second page, that first one is, social services, VRS contributions. That's just money in from them to the county, and then we make that payment to VRS. The next one is out of fines and forfeiture proceeds. Those are in the sheriff's office. They receive funding from state, this is federal dollars, and the associated expenditures that they have from that. The next one is state forfeiture proceeds and expenditures from that. The next one is landfill expenditures, additional needed to balance that account from what was budgeted. And then the last one is, now that one doesn't make sense, because it says landfill, it says EDA expenses. but that's the wrong, she's duplicated the line item and not changed that into what it actually is, and that's for payments that have been made, during the course of the year out of the economic development funds or out of, well, that one's come out of just general county reserves. And then in the last page that you have, those are budget transfers. That's coming from the miscellaneous and contingency line item, which we budget 25,000 in there. And we're using a portion of that, instead of taking it from reserves, just taking it from that department to cover some overages in building officials' office, animal control, and medical examiner costs. And most of that was due to the increase in salaries mid-year that caused those to go over.
I'll make a motion to approve supplemental appropriations and budget transfers. Second. Got a motion and a second, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, next we got reports and recommendations of the county administrator.
Mr. Chairman, I'd request to convene closed session for personnel, acquisition of property, and contracts.
You wanna go to, reports and recommendations of the board before we go into closed session? You wanna get that one, is that okay, get that one first? We'll go ahead and do that first, reports and recommendations of the board.
One thing I had was the, Mountain Empire Board, I know we got an email where they suggested some people, and nothing against those people, I know them all, good people, but I think we need to try to have some younger people on some of our boards, and, Christy Kress, or she's Taylor now, I believe, reached out to me 6 months ago and said, if there's ever anything that I can serve on, that you think I could have a good impact on, let me know. And several others have said they'd like to serve on the board, and I keep them all on the list, so when this came up, rather than pick somebody that hadn't said, hey, I wanna be on the board, I thought it'd be better to pick somebody that's wanting to serve on the board. It's somebody younger that's been to school recently. You all know Christie, Bill Christie's daughter.
We can discuss that in closed session, I think, can we?
I don't know what it'd fall under. Did y'all have anybody for it?
I didn't,
The one off the list.
of course, I just looked at the list and I didn't,
Yeah, I'm okay with tabling it, I just wanted to bring it up.
I think take,
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
I'll make a motion to table it.
they,
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else? You got anything?
no,
I don't have anything.
Did you say personnel, acquisition of realty, and contracts?
Yes.
Ready for that?
Mm-hmm.
I make a motion, we go into closed session pursuant to 2.2-3711 sub A, 1 personnel, 3 acquisition or disposition of realty, and 29 contracts.
second.
Got a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.